the line is going to be covered over, I can start off a little bit further down here with a knot and just do a couple of little tiny back stitches on there, little stitch there, going back, and another one to get us to the top there. That knot will be cut off again like we've done previously. So now we're starting the chain stitch. Got 2 lengths of thread in here to give us a little bit of a bit thicker stem, and started with the thread coming out there. We're going to work again with a loop here, go down next to that's where the threads come out, and make a stitch, come a bit further, come up out of the fabric a bit further down and into the loop, and that will leave a little circle with the thread coming out of it. Then the next stitch, go back inside the loop next to that first where the thread's coming out, and then come a bit further down your line, bring it up inside this loop, and that makes a second chain. Again down inside that second chain, and then a bit further up on the line there, and make that's our third chain. Just going to cut that knot off out of the way and go back down. So each time you're always coming into that loop, which is giving you like a row of continuous interlocking chains. So having finished off the first chain stitch down there, I'm now going to whip up this chain. So I've changed thread, I'm using a paler colour now, and I've also changed to a tapestry needle, so a blunt one with this. I'm using 1 strand, and all the whipping is that we're just going to go wrap it round those chains. So starting at the bottom, I'm going to go underneath the loop of the chain, and then underneath the next one, and work our way up. So this is sort of giving almost like a rope effect up the stem. If you did it the other way and came down, then your stitches will go the opposite way. Now the couching is always a really good way of using maybe thicker threads that you couldn't stitch with because they were too thick to go through your fabric. So I'm just brought that up to the front, and I am using now 1 strand of the embroidery thread, and that is just going to come up one side of it. I'm going to go down on the other side, so it's laying little stitches across the fancy thread so that it just couches it down onto the surface, and that's all there is to it all the way up. So if you want to put something that's a lot thicker, or it's different thicknesses at different along its length, then this is a really good way of getting it incorporated into your embroidery. You can either make a feature of your couching stitches and doing it a different colour like I'm doing here, slightly different shade, or you can make it as invisible as you want to and really match the shade up so that you can't really see what the couching stitches are. For this first one, we're going to use seeding as the padding in the middle now. You can use this with either 1 strand or 2 strands. Might as well leave the 2 strands in now while we've still got the thread attached. And seeding is lots of tiny little stitches in different directions, and can be used just as a decorative stitch in its own right, but we're using it to make a layer of stitches underneath what will be our final satin stitch over the top. So this is just lots of small stitches. Okay, so now we're going to do the top layer of satin stitch over that, the main part of that, that poppy seed head. So for this, the reason I've changed to one strand of thread is you actually get a nicer finish when you're doing the satin stitch if you've just got one thread to manoeuvre. So I'm going to make a start with a stitch that's going to go diagonally. So I come up at the side there, and I'm going to have all the stitches diagonally. Now you can see that I've come up on the outside of the outlining stitch, and I'm going to go down this on the outside. So we're covering that outlining stitch as well. So that's going to give us a nice edge to the satin stitch. So for satin stitch, all these threads, in theory, have now all got to lie next to each other, just side by side, and make a nice smooth finish. So I'm coming up just to one side of the first stitch and going down at just at the side of it at the bottom there, so that these will all just lie down diagonally next to each other. And you do that once you've got your first line in, so you'll finish one side and then go back and continue to fill in the other side, but keeping the same angle of stitches. So we've finished off down one side. I'll go back up to where we started, and I'm just now going to fill in on the other side of those stitches to complete the shape. So we are going to do 2 layers of satin stitch, but in different directions. So the first one we'll put in and gone back down to one strand, and we'll say inside. Oh, the outline has been done with outline stitch, which we've learnt before. So I'm going to fill in the inside with some satin stitch in one direction, but keep inside those lines. The second layer will go over the top of these and go to the outside of those lines, just like we did with the last one. So once we've finished the first layer of satin stitch, we're now going to go in a different direction to do the top layer. So on this time we're going to come down, I'm going to work them directly down from the top to the bottom, but we'll also be covering the outlines as well at the same time. So I'll put the centre one in, and I'm going to move down one side. This padded satin stitch is looks slightly more padded than the other one we did because of that full lot of stitching underneath as opposed to the seeding stitches. So it just gives you a different effect. That's now filled in one side, then we'll come back to the middle and complete the other side. The stitch, which is a raised chain band, which gives a really nice raised up stitch off the surface, and it's quite textured. So it's made in 2 different stages. So for the first part, we're going to bring the needle up, starting at the top, and it's going to have a series of straight stitches which are going to be our guide stitches. So I'm making across the stem, slightly spaced apart. So I'm bringing the needle up, taking it across the stem, taking it down. I'm using 2 strands of thread, and I've changed to the other green. It doesn't matter, you can stick to the same one if you want to. Across. And you'll make this sort of foundation of stitches all the way down the stem, and then we start back at the top. Okay, I'm going to stop there, but you get the idea. We come all the way down. I've already put the foundation stitches on this smaller one, so I'll carry on working from there now. So what we need to do is to bring the thread up at the top above that first stitch, above that first cross stitch. And at this point I'm actually going to change needle from a sharp needle to a finer tapestry needle. The tapestry needles have got a blunt end, and because the rest of this stitch now is on the surface of the fabric, and we don't really want to catch the fabric as we're working it. We want our stitches to slide into place. So what the first part of this stitch is, I'm just going to move that out of the way, is from underneath that first horizontal stitch. I'm going to go underneath it and come up diagonally up to the left and bring that thread through. So it's gone over the foundation stitch and off up to the left. Then the loop stays down here, and to the right of that stitch I'm going to go now back underneath the foundation thread and pull that through. So this is now making a loop, a chain on there. The next one up finishes the first stage, up to the left, and then down from the right hand side through the loop. Up to the left and down through the loop. Up to the left first and then down through the loop. This you'll carry on all the way down, and then you can actually get another row in as well next to it. It might be a little bit tight, but it really does make it really nice and firm and a little bit raised up, which would be quite nice for a stem. So you can then just, because these are all worked on surface, they'll actually slide across. They've not been fixed to the ground fabric. So we're going up to the left and down. Coral stitch is a knotted stitch, so I'm hoping that we don't get tangled in a knot at the same time. Right, so we need to lay the thread down in the direction we're going to be stitching, and then this first stitch next is going to, so coming along the line a little bit, and I'm going to go down above that thread and come up below the thread, but in the loop. So as it's being laid, it's also being knotted at the same time. So like that. So do that one again. So holding it down along the line, and from the top take your needle down and underneath the thread. So I'm now coming underneath it there. I'm in the loop there so that I can tie this now into a knot. You can make these knots, so lay it down, take it down and underneath into your loop so you can pull it along. You can make them as close or as far widely spaced as you want to do. It really doesn't matter. So. Up, take it down and bring the point back to where your thread is. Wrap round at least equal distance. If you want them raised up, you can put more wraps on and then they'll curl up on themselves. Keep your fingers on the wraps till you pulled it through, and then it will curl back on itself. Take your needle back down to finish off your bullion knot. We want one in a different direction, so needle through, take it down, point up near the thread, 1, 2, and then pull it through. And take the needle back down. So So for this Colonial one, it's almost a figure of 8 on top of your needle. So if you hold your thread like that, and then you're going to scoop that away so that you've got the thread running over the needle, and then bring your thread over the top of it, so you've then wrapped it round and you've made a figure of 8 on top of your needle. Then put the needle back down next to where your threads come out, pull the thread up tight so they're not up tight, and then bring it through. Makes a slightly smaller knot than the French knot, so it's quite nice to have the two sizes intermingled together. So we'll make another one of those. So bring the thread through, hold it, scoop that away like that, then take it over the top and bring your needle back in. Pull the knot up, hold it. Another one. So hold the thread, scoop that away, and then over the top and bring it back through.